I've got this book from the library. It's in tatters. It's Remains of the Day. I read it. It's Ishiguru's. I read it before and I'm reading it again. And I found it quite interesting even now. So here we go. The Remains of the Day. It is Kazuo Ishiguru, The Remains of the Day. And it's a very old, of course, copyright 1989, but it's all yellowed and all of that. So now, The Remains of the Day. Actually, I was hearing the Nobel Prize acceptance speech of Ishiguro of 2017, where he says that he's particularly fascinated by people who are prudes, dedicated to their work, that they forget to live for themselves, and then are assailed by a niggling feeling something is missing. And when they realize it's too late, he has written a few books based on this string of thought. Now, in The Remains of the Day, he talks about a butler, prim and proper Steve. He's committed to his work, that he gives his best years to serve the wrong values without any questions for his employer, who was a Nazi sympathizer, contrary to his belief. He has a perfectly servile attitude, no time for his father fighting for his last breath after a stroke because an important meeting was on at Darlington Hall. His love interest, whom he doesn't entertain because of one, no time, and the other is that keeps himself to himself. Like he's scared of letting out his feelings, not sure of himself, sort of. And in a way, he himself has said that, that butler is like a metaphor for many of us who sail through our lives doing our duty, camouflaging our feelings, and miss out on sort of heaven on earth because we are enchained by our own so called rules. Really, the book is a lovely read. You'll come to know a lot about the countryside also. Um, the language is good. A movie by the same name, I mean, based on the book. But let me tell you, the book takes the cake. It's a delight to the mind. You should go ahead and read it. And he talks about friendly banter, which has had no place in his life. And when the Darlington Hall changes hands, the new American employer comes, and a new exciting chapter begins in the evening of his life, where he does a lot of introspection while driving through the countryside on the behest of his new employer. And he's like, and watching a sunset, decides sunsets are as good, if not better, than sunrises. Decides to make the most of the remains of the day. That's exactly what the story is all about. And like you can see day 6 evening, and I'm going to read a little from here. The stranger, sort of where he meets a stranger, he's looking out, sitting on the pier. So the stranger says, "Oh dear mate, Have here, you want a hanky? I've got one somewhere. Here we are. It's fairly clean, just blew my nose once this morning, that's all. Have a go, mate. Oh dear, no, thank you. It's quite all right. I'm very sorry. I'm afraid the traveling has tired me. I'm very sorry. You must have been very attached to this lord or whatever. And it's 3 years since he passed away, you say? I can see you were very attached to him, mate. Lord Darlington wasn't a bad man. He wasn't a bad man at all, and he had the he had the privilege of being able to say at the end of his life that he had made his own mistakes. His lordship was a courageous man. That's how he talks. Uh, so that he says, you see, I trusted in his lordship's wisdom. All those years I served him, I trusted I was doing something worthwhile. I can't even say I made my own mistakes, really. One has to ask oneself, what dignity is there in that? So sometimes, for its dignity's sake, one does so many things. One holds oneself back. And so he says, now look, mate, I'm not sure I follow everything you're saying, but if you ask me, your attitude's all wrong. See? Don't keep looking back all the time. You're bound to get depressed. And all right, you can't do your job as well as you used to, but it's the same for all of us, see? We're all got to put our feet up at some point. Look at me. Been happy as a lark since the day I retired. All right. So neither of us are exactly in our first flush of youth, but you've got to keep looking forward. And I believe it was then that he said, you got to employ yourself. You got to enjoy yourself. The evening's the best part of the day. You've done your day's work. Now you can put your feet up and enjoy it. That's how I look at it. Ask anybody, they'll all tell you the evening's the best part of the day. He says, Steve replies that I'm sure, the butler, I'm sure you're quite correct. I said, I'm so sorry. This is so unseemly. I suspect I'm overtired. I've been traveling rather a lot, you see. So 6 days he was in his employer's car all over the place, enjoying himself, a lot of introspection. And he says that it is 20 minutes since the man left, but I have remained here on this bench to await the event that has just taken place, namely the switching on of the pier lights. As I say, the happiness with which the pleasure seekers gathering on this pier greeted this small event would tend to vouch for the correctness of my companion's word. For a great many people, the evening is the most enjoyable part of the day. Perhaps then there is something to his advice that I should cease looking back so much, etc. So he had to have a positive outlook, etc. He says that he says it occurs to me furthermore that bantering is hardly an unreasonable duty for an employer to expect a professional to perform. I have, of course, already devoted much time to developing my bantering skill, but it is possible I have never previously approached the task with the commitment I might have done. Perhaps then, when I return to Darlington Hall tomorrow, Mr. Faraday will not himself be back for a further week. I will begin practicing with renewed effort. I should hope then that by the time of my employer's return, I shall be in a position to pleasantly surprise him. So look at that. It's beautifully written, the way simple language and the remains of the day and its Faber and Faber, London, Boston. A must read for sure.